What's good, gente? Thank you guys once again for tuning in. Like always, as you guys can see on the thumbnail and on the title, right? We're gonna be talking about the New Flowers and how pretty much how they were one of the first dropout gangs, right? At least when it came to the norteños. So with all that being said, gente, before we get started, I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure to hit a thumbs up for your boy. Make sure to subscribe, hit that follow, hit that notification bell in case we go live, right? You guys ain't gonna want to miss out. And especially, man, if there's actually some new flowers that would want to tap in, hit the linea, bro. Or if I happen to be live, the link's always up for people to jump on, eh? So with all that being said, man, thank you guys for your support, and let's get started on this video. So the New Flowers happen to be a group that at the beginning, of course, a lot of these gangs that they now call dropouts, they weren't always dropouts, right? They did start on the main lines. And especially when it came to the New Flowers, man, some of their goals that they had was to pretty much dismantle the Nuestra Familia, right? So they had to be on those main lines, but they actually did travel to the SNY, and they were pretty much considered to be one of the first dropout gangs, right? Especially when it comes to the certain organizations. And I will explain a little bit more. Of course, there's going to be a lot of people in the comments. There's going to be actually a few. I know some content creators have said in the past that they're not technically dropouts, especially because well, I don't know if they're part of that group and they just want to talk really good about it because they don't talk bad about others. But technically, they try to say they're not dropouts, especially because they have a certain yard, even though they're not deep in numbers. I did get in contact with some bulldogs, and they actually, I can actually stamp that there is some new flowers there, right? There is a lot of transferring going on and all kinds of bullshit, but they happen to have a few new flowers. Not many, of course, but it's a bulldog yard. It happens to be in a bulldog yard. So they happen to have a certain yard that they want to claim as an active yard for them, right? But they are on the SMY. So a lot of people like to dispute that, right? That there is two fractions when it comes to the new flowers. Technically, no, bro. Once the ones that are in Salinas Valley, or if they happen to get moved or whatever, right? If they happen to hit the calles and they come across some of these new flowers that are out here, right? They will more likely happen to program with them and be cool with them, right? Because they do consider themselves one group, even though people like to say otherwise. But are they dropouts? Well, I'm gonna give you guys my opinion, especially because I have this conversation with some actives, and they happen to kind of agree with me at the same time, right? And I'm gonna give you guys my opinion why, especially nowadays, because I'm gonna talk about now, not about the past. A lot of groups in the past were mainline, right? Same thing with the writers. So, but I'm actually gonna speak on what they are doing now, right? So, in my opinion, I'm gonna have to say no, right? They actually happen to be the first group to go against the NF. Until this day, the ones that are out here in the calles, they're not hitting just the regular norteños. Yeah, that's not their goal. Most of their members happen to be ex-norteños, or actual norteños that want to start pushing that push. Because nowadays, a lot of people in the calles, whether people want to believe it or not, they have certain people that influence them, whether it's family members or just good ass homies of them, right? So if they happen to have that one boy, hey, more than likely they're either associates or they happen to become part of that group eventually, right? So they happen to go against the NF, and their goal is to pretty much infiltrate, right? So they do happen to still look the same, look like homeboys. They're out there flamed up. They're out there throwing NF, right? So I know a lot of people might get confused as fuck. So that is something that was kind of confusing, right? But I believe at the beginning, it wasn't really technically called New Flowers. I'm not quite sure if there's a new flower out there, man. Please correct me, right? But I believe it was called New Foundation or some shit like that. I could be wrong, right? So don't quote me on it, right? But if there is someone out there, man, please correct me. But at the same time, when it comes to the new flowers, man, there is a big difference, especially at the beginning. At the beginning, they're like, they were actually, they have goals, right? And their goals is to infiltrate. And their goals was to pretty much dismantle the NF. So a lot of them were active, but they did cross to the SNY side. And you would still see the difference from the rest. I'm not gonna actually say all the riders were like not to par, but you could actually tell when someone was actually pushing that little agenda, because they would actually program like if they were still active. That's something that the new flowers never dropped. They try to have education. They would try to still do some of the little things, right? You can see that they still had some type of hate when it came to the South. Maybe things have changed, especially now that they've been on the SNY side for a minute. But I know that they still had like some type of remorse, or some type of way that they felt about them, right? All their members were ex norteños. They either were big homies or part of that little clique. Nowadays, things have changed. I do see a lot of members just getting recruited that weren't technically never really clicked up with certain organizations, right? But they were different, homie, and I know that a lot of people out here in the calles, they probably get real confused when they do see new flowers, right? Because there is people out here that throw NF, and I know they probably get confused thinking that they're Nuestra Familia and stuff like that. But that is their goal, homie. Their goal is to blend in and actually try to dismantle whatever the organization has going on, right? That's their push, so they are technically still norteños out here in the calles. They're technically still pushing that push. They do funk with a lot of northerners, so people do get confused, because I know in Tulare County it's a little bit more different than when it comes to San Jose and all these other little spots where they happen to be at, right? I know in Tulare County they do funk with certain hoods, but it's because they already had established that in Tulare County, man, there's a lot of new flowers, right? And since they happen to be from that area, a lot of the ends and stuff like that, word gets around that they're technically no good. So that's why they have them beefs. But when it comes to these other cities, right, where they have new flowers that are technically not from there, right? They tend to blend in. And people do get confused, like, hey, is this food just a regular norteño? And like I said, man, they do consider themselves norteños. So they'll answer you straight up like, "What's up, Annie?" And they'll go along. But it's to get information, and it's technically to be able to dismantle whatever that organization got going on in that town. And they are getting deep with the years. I actually seen that group grow, especially when I was incarcerated, man. I honestly thought that was a group that was kind of dying out. I actually seen a lot of their members either becoming writers or just clicking up, with other groups. They were falling back, but they did have some strongholds, and they were able to maneuver it, man. They're actually a group that now outnumbers the writers, and that's a fucking trip. We used to outnumber them by a lot. Now they happen to have majority, and to be quite real, I honestly think there's a few writers that ended up becoming new flowers. And I was like, what? That's I was actually tripping out on that shit. But the new flowers are growing. They have strongholds in Tulare County, of course. That happens to be the strongest one they have in San Jose, Modesto. There's even a few that happen to be in the Stockton area. So I was actually tripping out, man. I was like, man, these dudes are starting to settle base in a lot of cities, So don't be surprised if you see them in a city near you. Straight up, of course, if you're not ganged up with like the certain things that they do have, like to tell if they happen to be a certain member, you're not gonna be able to notice, right? You'll think that they're just a norteño, and you'll probably shake his hand and be cool with them for the next year or two. And you more than likely, by the time you figure out what they are, you probably even be part of that clique already. So it'll be a little bit too late, right? But they do have little signs that you could tell, like, hey, bro, this fool happens to be a new flower, by the little things that they say. They do call each other loved ones. So if you happen to hear that, more than likely they happen to be part of the new flowers, right? They also happen to get a lot of roses tatted on them. A lot of them happen to get flowers blasted on them. So that's another sign of a new flower. Of course, nowadays, man, most of them don't even give a damn. You'll see them straight up have Nueva Flor blasting on them, or you'll see a NF on them, right? But with flowers around or something that indicates that they happen to be a Nueva Flor, a new flower. You'll be able to tell, especially if you done time. You could just tell, right? In prison, I don't know how they are nowadays, if they happen to be on that political push. I happen to see that they were like still doing the active programa, but they happen to be kicked back. Nowadays it could be a little bit different, especially because they happen to be growing in numbers. And I know a lot of people are even going to be saying like, damn, for a dropout group, they're actually putting in work. Yeah, I happen to agree with you. Their goals and what they actually have going on. Yeah, man, they're actually a group that you got to be aware of and be trucha, right? Because they're there to do something, homie. They're not there to just play games. And some may even say, like, man, these dudes ain't dropouts, you know? Hey, it's just the label that certain people get just because they go to certain yards. Just because they're on certain yards, don't get that shit twisted. There's some groups that are actually a threat to certain organizations. And this happens to be one, probably priority number one when it comes to that certain group, right? Especially because when it comes to their goals, man, they like to blend in and dismantle certain things, right? So yeah, man, with all that being said, man, what do you guys think, gente? Do you guys consider this group to be a dropout group or what? You know, are you guys going to give them a second chance? Or you guys are going to agree with other content creators just because they have certain yards? At the end of the day, I will say that the New Flowers are one group, right? Because there has been New Flowers that tap in before, man. They just haven't reached out on an IG or on an email, right? To actually clarify some things. But like I said, one of the reasons why they probably don't do that is because they still program like an active group. So with all that being said, gente, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So if you did, make sure to hit a like for your boy. Make sure to subscribe, hit that follow, hit that notification bell, right? Just in case we go live. And that you don't miss out on any video that I drop, right? So with all that being said, gente, thank you guys for your support. And I'll see you guys on the next one or on the live.
It's E.B.K every day, all day, to the day I die. It's E.B.K, E.B.K.